Yes, hello. This is the Be Live show called Say It in Your Own Words, and I'm here with Ilan Levy. Hi, Ilan. Thank you for
Hello,
being
how
our
are you,
guest. He is a neighbor media journalist, as I am, and also he has been involved in the ARE, Alexandria Rezoning Petition issue in East Cambridge. And I think a lot of people, Ilan, are not aware of what's going on in East Cambridge. How long have you lived there?
I've lived in East Cambridge for 4 years.
Okay. And what made you become involved in this issue?
Well, basically, I like my neighborhood, so I started going to the East Cambridge planning team meetings a few years back, and there's a few issues here and there that attract my attention, and the Alexandria rezoning petition was one of the biggest issue that ever came up at ECPT. So I decided that I was going to get involved, and I wanted to see what was going to happen and try to help in any way I could.
And where is this located? Alexandria is a large company who wants to develop in East Cambridge. Could you tell us a little background on it?
Yeah, Alexandria Real Estate Equities is a company that's based, if I remember well, in California, and they basically develop lab space in different parts of the United States, and they have one big investment here in Cambridge, particularly in our area of East Cambridge and Area 402142, which is Tech Square right now. And what they've purchased in East Cambridge is the intersection of First and Binney Street, the first two parking lots that are there. And then on the other side, all the red buildings that you see. I don't know if you're a bit familiar with East Cambridge, but when you walk up Binney, on your right side, you're going to see a lot of red buildings, so all that area. And then the block between 5th and 6th Street, and a small building in the back, a small piece of land in the back, where a building called the Foundry is. So it's a mixed, it's 15 acres of land, so it's a very big area.
And they wanted to change some of the zoning laws to fit their purpose of being there?
Well, the basic principle was that a few years, in 2001, the city adopted ECAPS, which was the East Cambridge Area Planning, Eastern Cambridge Area Planning Study. And basically it redefined the zoning for East Cambridge and limited the height and the amount of floor area ratio, so the number of space you could build depending on the number of your footprint, of your area footprint. And so at that time they developed, they came out with a resident in a very long 2-year process with a lot of new zoning that would help East Cambridge grow into a vibrant neighborhood. And Alexandria basically came in and said, okay, we want to basically double the amount of lab space that we can have on the land that we have purchased, and in exchange we're going to give you a 2-acre park in the back between Bent and Charles Street. So that was the initial deal that came up a year ago in February when Alexandria came to ECPT. It was their early proposition. And so they came in, and in September they worked with us a little bit towards different types of try to figure out what would be best for the neighborhood and how could the development adapt, and what other kinds of things would the neighborhood need in order to adapt to such a big development. Could it support it? If it couldn't support it presently, what should be suggested to the city to be done? So we worked very hard as a small group of a subcommittee of East Cambridge Planning Team, which was basically a group that met on a regular basis during the week to try to figure out what would be good for East Cambridge. And we tried to rethink a little bit ECAPS according to what the developer was proposing. And so that was a very long and arduous process. But basically, okay, I think I've gone on a tangent also.
And did some people think their initial proposal was a good one?
I think everybody was very interested by the initial proposal, although very skeptical because of the substantial amount in floor area ratio that they were proposing, because they were going from 700,000 square feet of 750,000 square feet of allowable development to 1.5 million square feet. So it was a doubling of the amount of space that they would be allowed to have, and so it was very difficult to accept that. But the park was something very attractive because in East Cambridge we're desperate for open space. So that got us talking, and they came as a very friendly and socially conscious, or kind of a Ben and Jerry's type of a real estate developer.
And if there were any differences as time progressed with the negotiations, how did they receive any of the disagreements or questions that were?
Well, basically, they had what happened is that the subcommittee had initially in the first 7 months, from February to August, was basically mostly the neighbor working with some people from Alexandria and trying to figure out what was possible and not possible. Especially, it was more dreaming. And then in September, it was more, things became more concrete as the city council and the proposal went in front of a subcommittee of the city council, the ordinance committee, that was chaired by Councillor Murphy and Mayor. And during that time, a subgroup of the subcommittee, 5 people, would meet twice a week with the developer and the councillor to try to figure out how to integrate what we had dreamed about into the possible plan. And so communication were established a lot of the time during those meetings, and also through letters and email communication to the different interested parties.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like toward the, as it progressed toward the end of it recently, that there's been a lot of exasperation because of the process itself. That could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the basic thing that happened is that towards the very end of the process, we had come up with a certain. We were told that we were to come up with a certain number of things that we thought were really essential in order for East Cambridge to be able to absorb such a big development. So we came up with our proposal, and unfortunately we didn't get any feedback until the very last minute of the planning board meeting, which was in January, in mid-January. And so we weren't able to actually review or understand what was going on, if our proposal or our concerns had been addressed. And so it was very difficult and frustrating. And, we're working, and we did that as, of our own free will, just because we care about where we live and we want to see it grow in a positive fashion. So it was very frustrating. And as it kept on going, it kept on being last minute, kept on being, do we have time to review? Is everything
Right.
there?
Right.
And so everybody got a little bit like overwhelmed by the, sudden burst of information that were coming our way, and of our understanding of what was, emanating from those words were not a lot of things that were working towards what we had suggested.
Right. It's been my observation that sometimes the political process in wealthier communities goes in the favor of the people who have the time to attend these meetings, and it's sort of like whoever isn't exhausted at the end of it. If you have a regular job, a full-time job that you have to attend to, where do you get the time to follow it for 2 years and follow up on each step of it? And if they are kind of blowing you away by leaving it to the last minute and not leaving you time to respond, how do you get heard in a situation like that?
Yeah, it's very difficult. And the ordinance committee, where we basically went after the planning board, what happened is that the zoning had to go through the planning board, which is the part of the community development, and it's a board that reviews rezoning petitions, and they give a recommendation to the city council, and the city council also receives a recommendation from their ordinance committee, who also reviews and tries to negotiate with the developer, also pending and within the recommendation of the planning board. And it turned out that when we were very present at all the planning board meetings, especially at the last one, and we had just received the new rezoning, so we hadn't had time to review it. So we were asking to get more time, and we didn't get it. And basically the planning board just passed along the buck to the city council by telling them, we think that what we've seen is good, but we haven't had time to review in detail, so we don't know. And during that meeting, Alexandria came out and they basically proposed more building than was originally suggested. What we wanted was to have housing to be part of the development, because mixed use is essential in order to get a 24 hours,
Right.
24/7 type of environment.
Right.
And it turned out that we wanted that it would be part of, we wanted to compromise. They would have, instead of having 1.5 million square feet, they would take out 200,000 or 300,000 square feet and put housing instead. It would still increase substantially their what they had as of right, and on top of that, they could sell the real estate that they would be housing because they're not a housing developer to someone else and still make money out of that.
And how did they feel about your compromises?
Well,
suggestions?
we basically we were ignored. So it was a total case of it's. People talked, but in terms of concrete result, every time there was something that was supposed to be concrete, it seems that we had been ignored all the way.
You had some interesting comments in part 3. I think you've gone up to 5 installments of this, so people who have been following it can see how it progresses. But on part 3, it seemed particularly frustrated with how things were going. You said that East Cambridge was a sacrificial lamb squeezed between big roadways and overwhelmed by disproportionate development. And then another strong comment was the councillors at large were utterly failing when important matters were before them. So that's very strong language. A lot of us, love our city councilors, so we're trying to imagine how they drop the ball in this one if you feel that way.
Because I feel that the process is totally in disarray. It's not in disarray, but it's contradictory. There are many things. I hear a lot the city councillor, for example, talking about the environment, green buildings, and things like that. There was one of our clauses. We wanted all the buildings that were going to be developed by Alexandria to be LEED Gold, which the LEED standard is a new environmental standard set by the federal government, and the developer has to make certain things happen. For example, source all its material locally, try to develop environmentally friendly, do something like roofs that are garden roofs and things of the kind, and they get points for that. And the more points you get, the more accreditation as an environmentally friendly or green building you are. And gold is the ultimate standard. And they were thinking, so we heard our city council talk a lot about green, and when it came to Alexandria, they are allowed to build buildings that are going to be here for 50, maybe 100 years, and the best they can do is LEED silver, which is quite substandard in terms of a long-term view.
And Cambridge seems very committed to green development.
Exactly. So it's a contradiction. And there are many steps like the traffic impact on our neighborhood and the noise impact that it's going to have on our neighborhood. Those are things that are not taken, that are going to be taken into consideration, but later into process, after the rezoning was already accepted. So there is no way to say what's going to happen. A lot is left to the discretion of the planning board, which is a very arbitrary board to of what I've observed.
Right, and one development that came up during this process was finding out that some contributions had been made by Alexandria to city councilors. That kind of surprised me.
Yes, it surprised me too. But I just want to close on the last point about the process. It's really when we're talking about the process, is really doing the things in the right order. And the city council failed us on that part that you quoted me, because I think that they're aware of that process and they should be aware of the pitfalls and maybe do something about it so that it doesn't happen and so that proper development and proper participation by the citizen happens. So that was really about the process, and closing the last question that you had. Yes, and then now to go back to the city council, it was to my great surprise, I stopped writing my blogs for a few days because during the city council last week, during which the vote was going to occur, one of the residents of East Cambridge and people around her pointed out that city councillor had received contribution and should recuse themselves from voting on the matter. So, and I thought that they had maybe a valid point, but the city councillor seemed to answer it, and I was pretty much. I didn't know what to think about it. So I went and I explored it a little bit more. And to my great surprise, I found that at the end of December, both co-chairs of the ordinance committee, which were negotiating with Alexandria and the residents, had received maximum contribution from the regional chief executive of Alexandria and from their chief project manager for this particular development that they were petitioning for. So I was very surprised to see that. But I don't want to play, I don't think it doesn't feel right to me. And again, it feels like there was something wrong with the process. And that, I heard some city councillors said that, if you think that something is wrong, you should run to change it. But I think that, city councillors are elected for a job and they should do their job rather than ask me to come in and do it for them.
Mm-hmm. And you had talked about the labor unions who were involved in the development as well, that you felt that they were having the attitude of a job at any cost, not looking at what the results of their job would be in the community.
Yeah, it's my impression. This was kind of a very, but that might be something just like culturally different, as I said in my blog. It's something that, in Europe, when a lot of the time Americans make a lot of fun of the French because the French strike all the time and there's always the strike. Well, a reason they can do that is because there is an accepted social pact between the people where the unions are there for the benefits of everybody, and therefore when they say that there should be a strike, a lot of time it's the only way that they can make themselves heard, and usually the public is supportive and the citizenry in general is supportive of what of labor, and vice versa. When students or people have problems about privacy and other issue, labor joins in. And on the surface here, it looks the same, but then at the city council, it was just astounding to me to see the difference, where the labor was just basically unquestioning behind a rezoning, which basically doesn't do anything for labor. A rezoning is simply they change the law of what you can build or not build in certain areas or not. And if a building is going to be built or not, you have no idea. And labor has I don't see what their real interest is in that. But they weren't the only ones which, for whom it seemed weird. There was the president of Biotech Council of Massachusetts and the president of the Business Council of East Cambridge. So again, those people should also contribute to the neighborhood in which those developments occur and make sure that everything happens for the best of the neighborhood and people living there also.
Do you think the economy is part of the reason for this attitude, that they just want to be employed?
Well, I think that the economy, if it's always easy to say, it's the economy. You have to take a long-term view in most things. Most of the time we try to rationalize. There's certain things that we want now, and we are pressed to ask and say, okay, I want it now. But there are certain things you can't help it. They're long-term. And the economy is a long-term thing. And whatever we're trying to do now that's going to fix the economy, it's certainly not allowing for more rezoning that's going to make a big difference in 3 or 4 years. The developer is still going to build something. It still might be something that might be substantial, where it's going to be union job or not. It's going to be be fought for. But the fact is, it's not because the economy that we have to make a gift to a corporation. I'm going to take the tendency that I don't know if I'm for an inconsiderate bailout. Everybody can have whatever they want because it's good for the economy. It's not the mentality that I think that we have to be careful with those types of things.
Mm-hmm. And I think we see President Obama having the same challenges, where he's looking to the future. Things might not have immediate impact right away, but he's looking at the big picture, and some people don't want to hear it.
Yeah, no, it's difficult because we all need to have, we all need to eat tomorrow and tonight, and it's not easy to be able to say, okay, I'm going to think long term. But unfortunately, it's it's an unfortunate reality, and I think that the developer and the city in this case, basically, especially the city council, have forgotten what they were there for.
And were you satisfied with the amount of people who got involved in this issue? I know you said there were 5 people who kind of showed up all year and worked on it.
Well, we were the subcommittee was about varying between 10 to 15, 16 people kept meeting on a regular basis, and the 5 people who were meeting with the city council, with the city council and the ordinance committee, were a subgroup of that, of which I wasn't a part of. And they were in direct negotiation and making, sharing and making sure that everything was going according to the rosy picture that was painted in front of us. You participate, and we're going to listen to you. And it turns out that we participate, but they don't listen.
Did you get many signatures on the petition that was circulated?
Yeah, what happened, like, yeah, one of my point, at one point I was like, kind of, I got frustrated with the whole thing, and I said to the people in the subcommittee, I'm going to keep on coming because I want to know what's going on, but I'm going to go for a petition against this development because I feel that whatever the process is right now, no one is being listened to, and us especially are not being listened to. And I think that if enough residents voice their opinion, the city council is not going to be able to ignore them. And it turned out that I went around and I got amazing reception from everybody, and I have to thank everybody for, opening their doors so gallantly and being so nice. And most of the time I found that, I said that at the city council, 8 out of 10 times people would sign the petition against the project with their main excuses or their main justification for it. It was the fact that the area was already overdeveloped and that whenever there was something very big, it was East Cambridge, and that whenever we made certain requests, we were never listened to. So that was their main intent, was like, okay, we're not against the project at its root, but we're definitely against a project that's going to come against the future of the neighborhood.
And at one point in your blog, you talk about, excuse me, an attitude that you didn't think you would succeed with fighting against some of these things, but that the city council would override it, but you wanted to do it anyway.
Yeah, it's important to keep a record. I thought that was a really important issue, and the same thing happened with Mirant, which I thought, a few years back when I started last year when I started 2 years at CCTV, there was one project which was called the Mirant Power Plant, which basically it was also an issue of zoning and special permits and things like that. And what had happened there was that Mirant, which is the big power plant by the river on the Broad Canal, had asked the city if they could do have more construction and also have a new jet engine for their power plant. And the city gave it to them, but as a mitigation, they were to build a boardwalk on the Broad Canal that would go from 1st Street to 3rd Street.
I remember that.
Yeah, and they basically never did it. And we got really mad, and we worked really hard, and we did what was necessary, and we actually we actually won, and the boardwalk is being built, and now it's something that's really, really positive for the neighborhood. And we were hoping the same thing from Alexandria, but it's not.
So you feel that with Alexandria, it's kind of a done deal at this point?
Yeah, there is no, not that there is nothing that I know that we can do, but we have to make sure that people are accountable and that the stories are told so that we know the way to do it and the way not to do it, and that we can't use the excuse all the time that, if you want to do it, you should be a city councillor. No, there are problems, I'm pointing them out. You're city councillor, you should deal with them.
And the residents are supposed to have some kind of a voice as well, I would imagine.
Well, our voice is the way I did it, hopefully, and the way we did it as neighbors is, to just be involved. And not everybody wants to do it. It's lucky that we have in our neighborhood a lot of people who enjoy doing it and who take part in it. And so we're doing it, but that's our role at least. And it doesn't have to be everybody, because obviously, it's not everybody's cake to go to a neighborhood meeting to feel what the developer is going to do.
Right, and you don't get paid for it. You spend so much time of your precious time doing it. What do you feel are the most important concessions that you did win in this situation? Did the neighborhood get some of the things it wanted?
No. Oh. I feel that that overall there is nothing that I can say. I feel that a lot of the issues that we've raised are still fundamental issues that haven't been dealt with and would have had to be dealt with prior to allowing such a rezoning. The issue of noise, another example was the issue of noise is a crazy issue in East Cambridge.
Yes.
We've done, the neighbors, some other residents have done a small study which I published in one of my blogs, where basically it comes out that we're above federal and city ordinance level in terms, and substantially at night in East Cambridge. So we asked the committee to make sure what we wanted was a zero net gain noise policy, meaning that any new building would not add to the already very high ambient noise. What we got was 100 feet from every building that was built, you wouldn't be able to hear the building. So it might sound really good, but in effect, they're going to build residential building within 30 feet of the building. There is residents. Yeah, there is residents within the 100 feet of the buildings that they're building.
Oh.
There is plenty of residential that's going to be affected within that realm. And again, how far does the ambient noise carry? How are you going to measure it? How can you actually? It's not a real concession because it doesn't mean anything. So that's an example of like, okay, why didn't we get anything? Because of that. There is language there that at least we feel, or I feel right now, that doesn't do anything except use words to say nothing.
So you feel if another situation came up that you were to get involved in, you feel like the process itself would have to change in order for the voice of the residents to be heard?
Yes, I think so. I think so. I think fundamentally there has to be, everything is set up so that it could work, but it has to work in reality. It feels a lot like theater.
Right.
It feels a lot like a play where you go and you play your role, and at the end, the outcome is already decided, and it's like kind of, had I known the end of the play, I don't know that I would have acted it that way.
So it might be that you would have to become a city councilor to change the process. It sounds like that big a role that you would have to be part of the government to actually pass a law and modify the process itself.
Well, I think it's our role as resident to participate and say, I don't have the time and it's not my calling to be a city councillor. So, but there are other people who are there and sure seem to know what they're doing. At least they claim they do. So I would really appreciate it if the people that are in position of power and are able to make a difference, that they use that position to make a difference. And change the system in order to address the issues where there are weaknesses and loopholes and things that make the process break down when it's supposed to actually just coalesce.
And is there anything else you would